Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Connect with the campaign for grade level reading on social media. On YouTube, subscribe to our channel at Grade Level Reading. On LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, follow us at Campaign for GLR. And on X, follow us at Reading by Third. Please use the hashtag Learning Tuesdays and tag us to tweet anything you learn from today's webinar, and we'll be sure to retweet. We encourage you to share your questions, reflections, and observations on social media. Again, I welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Sierra Sanchez, and I'll be behind the scenes helping to produce this conversation. Before we get started, I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge our enterprise and programmatic funders, as well as our individual donors. Your support not only allows us to hold these vital conversations, but also helps us create meaningful opportunities to share insights, foster connections, and build the CGLR community. Thank you. As we get started, I have a few housekeeping details to share with you. First, we'd love for you to introduce yourself, so please use the chat box at the bottom of the screen to share your name, city or state, and your organization. Be sure when responding to select both panelists and attendees so that everyone can see who is here, and feel free to share your thoughts and insights throughout the duration of the webinar. All attendees are in listen-only mode, but we encourage your engagement by posting questions in the Q&A box. We will dedicate the last portion of the webinar to respond to those questions you post, and our panelists will be typing out responses throughout the webinar. This conversation is being recorded and live streamed on Facebook, and a link to the recording, as well as all slides, bios, and resources, will be sent in a follow-up email to all who registered. And lastly, we'll be posting a brief on-screen evaluation during Q&A and highly encourage you to respond. This helps us with our commitment to continuous improvement. Sorry about that, I muted myself. Before we get started, I just wanted to highlight some of our upcoming webinars. Next week, for our final session in our Technology Enhanced Teaching and Learning series, we hope you'll join us to learn more about technology enhanced tutoring and how tech innovations are helping to close achievement gaps by ensuring the children most affected by learning loss have access to proven strategies that can accelerate equitable learning recovery. The registration link for that session will be posted in the chat box now, or you can scan the QR code at the bottom of your screen. Fortunately, though, after that series ends, we will be turning to GLR Week 2025 for a number of different sessions that will pique your interests. GLR Week will feature double headers each day that will lift up and highlight several targeted big bet interventions and approaches that are helping to close the gaps and drive early school success for children in economically challenged families. On this slide, you can see the numerous opportunities for engaging conversation that we'll be hosting, starting off with a virtual gratitude session for aquariums and zoos at 12:30 on Monday, July 28th, and a continuation of the conversation on technology and education, with a session co-sponsored by New America at 3 p.m. Again, on the slide, you can see more information and titles for these upcoming sessions, and we'll be posting more information in the chat box now for you to take a look and register for these sessions. And with that, I'm excited to introduce our moderator for today, John Gompertz, Executive Fellow with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Thank you and enjoy.
Thanks, Sierra. And hello, friends. Thanks for joining us today. This is, if you like watching TV series, this is episode 4 of a 6-part Technology Enhanced Teaching and Learning Institute, organized by the Campaign for Grade Level Reading with lots of help and guidance from our partners, including those with us today. Just to catch you up, here's what we've covered so far. First session was on the basics of AI. The second session was about leveraging technology to detect and support early learning differences. And the third session was on how technology can equip parents to power learning in homes and in community settings. We've dropped links to each of those first 3 sessions in the chat, and you can find good summaries at those links, and you can also find access to the recording if you want to watch or listen while you do errands or fold laundry or take stuff out of the dishwasher and all that kind of stuff. You'll find lots of illuminating content and valuable resources. Also, let me echo Sierra's opening and direct you to the final two episodes in this series. Next week, we're going to be looking at technology enhanced tutoring and the ways in which the combination of high touch plus high tech might equal big gains. And finally, during GLR week, on the Monday of GLR week, we'll be taking a close look at the guardrails and guidelines for tech that will promote well-being and literacy development. I recommend for signing up for those sessions as well. Here's what's on tap today. Everywhere we turn, we hear and see stories about artificial intelligence or AI. Some of those stories are optimistic, some are concerned, and some are downright dystopian and terrifying. It's, I think it's hard to know what to think about all this. It's easy to get on the it's dazzling path, and it's just as easy to get going down the road to it's horrifying. Here's the one big thing, though. It's real and it's not going away. Now, some of us are probably regular users of AI tools. Some of us are dabblers. Maybe some of us are newbies. But no matter where one is on this adoption curve, and no matter what your instincts are, whether you tend to be optimistic or pessimistic, each of us can benefit from learning more about AI and its possibilities for supporting early learning. That's why we made this session on AI a key part of our series on technology enhanced learning and teaching. Today, we're going to lean into the optimistic view of what AI might do for teaching and learning. The animating question for this session is, what if the technology causing debate in education could actually unlock extraordinary learning experiences for every student? It's a thrilling idea for those of us who are frustrated with the pace of progress and especially concerned about those young people who are being left behind. So what does that look like? What are the big ideas and what are some of the leading edge practitioners doing to put those big ideas into practice? That's what we're going to be talking about today. So let me tell you who's going to be with us for this conversation. And as a baseball fan, I should note that later tonight is the Major League Baseball All-Star game. And appropriately enough, we've got our own group of All-Stars with us today. Also, I promise this session will actually be more entertaining, more interesting, and certainly more useful than tonight's baseball All-Star game. So let me tell you who's with us today, and then let's get into it. Jean-Claude Brizard is the president and CEO of Digital Promise, a nonprofit organization focused on accelerating innovation in education. That's his day job. His real assignment is that he's a great friend and co-conspirator with the Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Gerald Fitzhugh is the superintendent of Orange County Schools in New Jersey, and he has held positions of teacher, principal, and many more. We were supposed to be joined by Juliet Penniman, the superintendent of schools in Hudson City, New York, but she had an emergency, as superintendents sometimes do, so she won't be with us today, sadly. And Larry Guilford is the principal of Sylvan Hills Middle School, public middle school in Atlanta, the site of the other All-Star game tonight. And he is currently working to open a new school in his urban community. As always, full bios are at the links in the chat. So now to start, I am so happy to invite my good friend Jean-Claude Brizard to join us. Jean-Claude,
John, good to see you. Always happy to be
welcome.
with you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. So, Jean-Claude, remind us what Digital Promise is. Can you just relocate everybody?
Oh, absolutely. So I joined the organization about 4.5 years ago. But digital promise was created out of an act of Congress back in 2008 when George W. Bush was president. And it was launched by President Obama in 2011. So our board initially was, again, nonpartisan, both sides of the aisle, appointed by members of Congress. We're called the National Center for Research in Advanced Information Technologies. But when Obama launched the organization with Arnie Duncan, we became known as Digital Promise. And our work falls in on three major buckets, right? So learning sciences research, technology innovation, but everything we do centers practice, the practitioner and practice. So we over-index on the folks who are leading school systems, who are leading schools, who are in the classrooms, basically doing the work that we needs to get done. Our job is to support and keep pushing toward that edge of the envelope kind of innovation.
Love it. Thank you so much for that. Okay, you personally, and your whole organization are real pioneers and enthusiasts for the possibilities of AI to improve teaching and learning. I said we were doing the optimistic view today. So tell us why you are so interested and how you think about these possibilities.
Yeah, so I mean, so I was a teacher, school principal. I mean, I've done all of it in education. My first teaching job in New York City was at Rikers Island, teaching inmates at Rikers. So I've seen the gamut of what can be done, and I've always been bullish about the role of technology and what it can do for kids. When I taught physics in New York City, I saw how tech, I won't date myself, I was using Mac E2s in those days, right? Really transformed. And I met with a bunch of my kids, high school students in Brooklyn this last week. We all had dinner, about 40, 50 of us. And they remembered, frankly, what that did for them in understanding physics. So I've seen the role of tech in really enabling, frankly, what can be possible in the most difficult science or math subjects, frankly, that exist.
So tell us how you think about AI
Yeah.
and going forward.
Yeah. Is it okay if show a few slides?
Show your slides.
Yes, let me do
So,
that. I think it'll be fun to actually watch
great.
some of this. Let me just set this, going back to the push you made, John, about this idea of moving from skepticism to enthusiasm. That does not mean as an organization we don't worry about the bad things that can happen with technology. But we also know of the real possibilities of what this can do. And I'm going to showcase a few here in this a very quick deck. There's a lot of information here. So I know we're going to be sharing the slides at the end. So if the audience miss any of this, you'll be able to get a copy of this. So I'm going to run through this rather quickly. I'm going to showcase a few very real products, real things that are happening in the sector along different subject areas to give you a sense of the possibilities here. But the goal is to spark imagination as to what's possible. And you said that AI is real and it's here. I want to say it's been here. AI showed up in education in 1975, so it's not new. Gen AI, what's happening today, is providing, frankly, an arc of acceleration that really pushes. And as I talk about this, our educators in the audience, I want to encourage you to think about how you can be crew. I'm paraphrasing my EL education folks I know who are in the audience today. How can you be crew and not passengers in this effort? Because we need educators to lead. Because I often said that education transformation is going to come at the hands of educators, not technologists. The technology is a tool, it's an enabler, it's an accelerator to what we know needs to happen between students, teachers, parents, and content. I'm going to come back to that in a bit. I'm going to move on quickly. We talked a little bit about how digital public social should be created, the three circles we actually work. Let me start with this. So when I was a first, second year teacher of physics in New York City, this thing you see on the screen was banned by the New York State Board of Regents because it was seen as a cheating tool. And when Gen AI, when ChatGPT blew up into the marketplace, I saw all these banning taking place across the country, and I got heartburn. And I said, "Wait a second, we thought this was a cheating tool." And all of a sudden, I remember when I was head of high schools in New York, this became a requirement on the test. And I remembered when I got a note from my chief of staff, our chief of staff in New York City, he said, "How quickly can you buy TI-83s for the city of New York?" Find out which kids need it and buy $13 million in 5 days. We spent buying TI-83s to ship across the city of New York to kids. And one thing changed to make this a requirement on the assessment in New York. One line, show your work. That was it. All of a sudden, we found a way of elevating the pedagogy, elevating the assessment, and became a tool. So my push to the audience here is keep thinking about how you have to elevate your pedagogical practice, your curriculum and instruction work to make the technology a necessary tool to make it happen. Let's go some examples. We know that the acceleration is real. Look how long it took for the telephone to permeate the American household, right? How long it took the PC, and it took 60 days for 100 million folks to get on ChatGPT, right? This is, again, not what's happening today, right? It's happening even faster today. It's going to be everywhere. It is going to be ubiquitous. We have to embrace it. We have to leverage it in a way that is ethical and responsible. Let me give you one example of what this could do for biology. Take a look at this.
If someone were to try to understand even a human being, they would need to take into account the many different ways that we communicate, the gestures we make, our facial expressions, the sound of our voice, whether it's quiet or whether it's loud. With animals, we need to account for the multimodality of their communication.
The modality is like sight, sound, motion. One of the core things we're working on are what are known as multimodal models. They're models that know how to interpret and translate different modalities. An example, how does an entire pod of whales behave compared to what they're saying? Ari will go down to Antarctica, place a suction cup tag on a whale, and that tag will move with them as they go throughout their day. We then can use this to start to translate from one modality to another. We are able to ask the model, what sound does one whale make to cause another whale to dive? And that might mean there's danger up here, it might mean there's food down there, but either way, it has something to do with behavior of diving. And this gives you a sense of the kind of decoding work that you can do when you have models that understand behavior, vocalizations, and context. We're building a large-scale, multimodal, multi-species, large language model. Instead of ChatGPT, think of it as Animal GPT. The whole point of Earth species is to change our relationship with the rest of nature. And maybe now, with this kind of AI, what we can learn is that humanity is not the center.
So we talk about Animal GPT, right? So the George Lucas Foundation is building new biology curricula, leveraging Gen AI. They're already seeing 10, 15 points in achievement, in gains in achievement with this. Think about what this could mean for biology. One of the things we do a lot of digital promise is making sure that, again, we keep centering what we know is practice. You think about what we need to do to really elevate and inspire and trigger, particularly the imagination of our young people. We talk about this idea of powerful learning, and this is our definition of powerful learning. And you can see it mimics what you see now in the portrait of a graduate, the idea of agency, purpose, curiosity, connection. This is the human ingenuity that I know is so important around curriculum instruction and assessment, right? Again, as you can see here, technology is the enabler and the supporter, not the main core work. This definition drives everything we do at Digital Promise, and it's keep talking about how technology can actually help us achieve some of this work. We also know, John, I know you're going to ask me this question later on. Really, the most important relationship in education is between teachers, students, and content. This is, again, from Dick Elmore's work at Harvard, but we know from the pandemic that parents are a critical component to this work because we know learning is ubiquitous, it is everywhere. And the question, of course, is how do we use technology to enhance this relationship amongst all these parts? But this is where it happens amongst all these pieces here. We know AI can amplify, it can accelerate our educators' ability. It does not replace the human connection that is necessary for teaching and learning. Education is human development. You cannot replace teachers in this endeavor, right? But a technology can enhance this particular work. Quick definition for us. I know many of you guys know what this is, what AI is, what Gen AI is, what LLMs are, and this work keeps evolving as we know. Most folks, when they think of Gen AI, they think of generative text, but we now know generative images, videos, all part of the work that we actually can do. We also know that we have to be, again, ethical around the use of technology, has to be equitable. Again, we know data can be biased, data can be racist, right? So how we make sure, and by the way, you can't eliminate bias with Gen AI, you can mitigate it. You can't eliminate. We have to understand it's there, and it's got to be effective. One thing I'll push to the audience is that when you look at edtech tools, when you're buying edtech tools, make sure they're certified by companies like Digital Promise, by ISTE, by COSIN, by CETA, CAS, and others, frankly, who look to certify products and make sure that they do what they claim to do. That's an important piece in your procurement. Different discussion for a different day. So let's take a look at perhaps how Gen AI can shift even mental models. One of the things that we know is that, look at American history, for example. When you think of the American Revolutionary War, who do you think about? These guys, right? Most often, this is what you think about when you hear about this. Very few of us really understand the lives of the average Americans who live in this time period, who are the real heroes of the American Revolutionary War. And the fact that we don't know about them because there was no one in, the 1700s taking selfies and posting on social media about what they actually are doing, right? The fact is that we didn't have that kind of technology in those days. This project at Arizona State University is having you engage with real protagonists, the folks who were the real heroes of the war. Let's a quick look at this video.
But I wanted to have a contemporary place that people could go through and walk through and really learn about some of these people. So on the walls of this, this gallery, we have a number of people. I mentioned Nancy Hart, who is a mother in Georgia and who captured 6 British soldiers by herself and with her 12-year-old daughter.
I did what I had to do and pulled the trigger of one of the stolen muskets I had in my hands. The crack of the gunshot echoed through the cabin, silencing the room.
So imagine engaging this individual using Gen AI and having a conversation. Imagine this showing up in different facets of American history, or history for that matter. Imagine this showing up during the American the civil rights movement, and actually engaging Dr. King in conversation. That is the power of what this can do, frankly, in shifting mental models on American history. So let's get to the core of what CGLI is all about, right? What could this do for literacy instruction? Let me show you a tool that is close to being showing up in the market, which is really worth looking. Many of us worry about screens and young kids. The founder of Leapfrog, the Scribe Pen, is built this. So when you think about this, when I saw this presentation for the first time, we're looking at pages on 125th Street in Harlem, New York, and you were immersed into the street, the music, the jazz. You felt like you were living in there. My kids are too old for this, but I wish I had this when my kids were young. Again, this is being tested now in a number of school districts by Digital Promise, MBRC, and others, frankly, who are looking at the efficacy of this particular tool. Let me show you one more on literacy. And this is an amazing partner of ours, former superintendent of schools, who built this particular platform called Mojo, using, again, LLMs to teach writing.
Mojo is one of the leading AI tools to support students with reading comprehension and writing. Mojo takes the texts and tasks from high-quality curricula and creates an interactive experience where every student receives the right level of support for them. Mojo uses AI, specific response criteria, and prompt engineering to diagnose each student's level of comprehension and respond with personalized affirmation and the next just right question. If a student is on the right track, Mojo challenges the student to go deeper. If a student is struggling, Mojo provides more targeted support. Multilingual learners receive on-demand translation support in 60-plus home languages. Students get multiple rounds of feedback on their writing and develop strong editing and revising habits. Mojo also provides powerful teacher tools, including a live class dashboard so teachers can see in real time each student's level of understanding and be far more strategic in their conferencing. Mojo uses AI to analyze large amounts of unstructured data. Mojo instantly synthesizes trends, identifies the biggest misconceptions, and suggests ways teachers can address them. Mojo also analyzes and grades student writing, supporting teachers to respond effectively and saving hours of time.
So again, you think about this. Let me show you one more. Maybe we've been talking a lot about this idea of multilingual learners, global languages, even affinity for cultures, etc. This is a new product that just came out maybe a year ago that looks at AI and human, that really gets you this idea of understanding languages and cultures, etc. And it combines AI and human interaction. But take a look at what this really does in terms of kids who are debating each other. And they learn very quickly how to master a language.
我方认为，在当今风水是一种迷信，原因有2点。
警方不太了解风水在现代的社会有什么，包括什么？
用一些错误概念的相信风水的人也一样，他们忽略了这些科学家发现出的结果。
那风水的很多原则，例如大门不能朝西南，要不容易闹鬼怪，不是为了避免神仙鬼怪的不良影响吗？
So this product moves you from memorizing vocabulary words, actually having a conversation. You can literally place yourself in a restaurant and have a conversation with a waiter. It really moves you to really proficiency, to fluency in language. The other thing that we are really excited about, John, here is this project we've launched thanks to the National Science Foundation with a mirror learning. So a mirror learning is a science reading platform that is used across the US. Now, at least 7 school systems are principals and teachers engaging with developers and taking an existing platform and extending it to multilingual learners, using scientists from Penn Grad School of Education who are experts in intonations, in language, etc., with our scientists in extending the political platform. So it is going to be an amazing asset for the sector. Let me wrap up maybe with this one in particular here, which I think is going to be really powerful. We talk about this idea that every single person is different. I live by this adage as a superintendent that every child's a work of art. You've got to create masterpieces. How do you get to the bespoke nature of every single student in a classroom of 34 students? We have an amazing platform of Digital Promise that is based on the work of Todd Rose, who says that there is no such thing as the average learner, and talks about every one of us have a Jack learner profile. We all neurodiverse. There is no such thing as neurotypical, etc. And we've moved folks to understanding that the majority of what you see in front of you in a classroom, you don't really understand about a particular child. The question is actually, how do you get there? And once you get there, how do you really design lessons in units to get folks there? So the LVN platform is an amazing learning science platform. What Your Way Learning is done is working with us, taking the platform and creating bespoke lessons and units for each kid. An example of this particular child you see in front of you, what you may or may not see, what you may actually get done. What you see here is a child in a wheelchair, but you may not see everything else around, you name it. Maybe it's the kind of bias you may be experiencing in mathematics, the fact that her bus is late every single morning, which makes it late to class every single day. All these things, this platform with AI helps you understand, so you can build very specific lessons for young people. And finally, as you mentioned earlier, and John, is that none of this is possible without frankly understanding the kinds of digital learning gap we've got to close. Without access to powerful technology, you will never get to a place, frankly, where AI can really be accessible by all students everywhere. It is everywhere for our young people. We got to make sure it's accessible to them in their classrooms and also at home. It's up to us.
Wow, that was a lot, Jean-Claude. Fantastic. Thanks so much. Let me break it down and get you to go a little slower on a couple of things because that was really a lot, right? Um, we're the campaign for grade level reading, and our energy is focused on early literacy, early school success, especially for kids who are at the most risk for being left behind. From all your experience, what do you think is the fundamental challenge with early literacy and early school success? And then specifically, how do you think AI, the various forms of AI, can be part of the answer to this longstanding challenge?
John, it's a great question. One of the puzzles for me is why it took more than 25 years for the science of reading to permeate our education conversation, right? We've known about this. My wife's dissertation at Columbia in 2005 was on the science of reading. And so just really confusing to me. Again, I'm going to go back to folks like EL Education who are in the audience who've been doing this work. I've been a fan of EL for more than 25 years. And the work they've been doing, frankly, around things like quality ELA program. So one is really understanding the science. It took us way too long to get here. And there's some amazing folks at the University of Washington, other places have done this work. So way too long to permeate what we know is fundamentally the right way to actually teach. And we still have resistors, by the way, that refuses to embrace the science of reading. The second I would argue is access to good literacy work in the earliest ages, right? I think is really important. We talk a lot about parents as first teachers, right? Yet they've never really had the tools in a way that is scaled to give them access to really how to help the young people. I think this Kabim tool could be an amazing asset to a lot of poor, maybe parents who don't have really good access early learning literacy work. One of the things I know that the folks at Kabim are doing really working really hard is not just to create something for the market, but to make it accessible in the most disenfranchised communities. I know this is the CEOs, the founders' dream. He tells me, he goes, I built 9 companies. I don't need any more money. He goes, what I need right now is to really solve a world's problem. So I think technology can help us get there, but at the same time, access that's given to parents and the folks, frankly, who are the ones who are in front of our young people can do that, including, frankly, our teachers who are teaching 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. Everything on emerging literacy, I think, is the kind of work that we need to do because we know the gap starts the moment they walk into school. They come in with a gap. So the more we can do that on the front end, giving access to families, the more powerful we can get there.
Let me ask you about balancing technology and all the dazzle and fun of technology with the sort of patience and different pace that reading can involve. There's an interesting thing going on in the chat where Imani says, too much stuff. Why kids see tons of stuff with things moving around? Don't we need like just calm, patient development of reading skills? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, so I go back to Kabim. If you get a chance to see the tool in action, it does exactly that. It is, first of all, it's more fun for the kid than for the adult, right? We know when you look at again, what we teach you on science reading, that very often it's boring to the adult, the repetition, etc. The tool you didn't see, you can actually take it and hit it like a hammer. It helps you with the decoding skills that you actually require, but it's physical books in your hand and a kid is going to keep reading the same book over and over and over again. So that is the work, right? It is the patience, it is understanding. We often say to John, and again, I take this from folks who know that reading is rocket science. It is not something you learn by osmosis, right? I have a 9, almost 10-year-old who basically exemplify this idea that he didn't know how to read at the end of first grade and moving to a different school, I focused on the science of reading, and he flourished. And again, it's kind of repetition, slow at night, 10, 11 p.m. I'm forcing him to go to sleep, reading that book, sitting and reading with him. I think the Kabim tool would be a powerful one, frankly, that can have a parent, as you saw in the video, a parent and a child sitting together and basically reading together. And the tool, again, is that kind of, is a tool. It doesn't replace the work of reading and teaching.
Gotcha. We've had a lot of conversations. You mentioned this in your opening comments about digital access, digital equity. I know this is something you're super concerned about. Um, what kind of technology, what kind of connectivities do folks need to have to make good use of AI? And when I say folks, I mean teachers, parents, students.
Yeah.
What kind of devices, what kind of connectivity, and if we don't have that stuff in place, is this going to be another instance in which technology actually opens
Oh, absolutely.
gaps rather than closes them?
John, absolutely. I think the panelists we have is a good question for them as well because they're solving that problem. I mean, I'm always grateful for the work that Verizon does with Digital Promise in nearly 700 schools in demonstrating what it's like. We use the expression, John, of digital learning gap, not digital gap, because we have to remember the tool is there to support that. So you need sufficient access to a good platform. The broadband is critical as well, sufficient broadband. During the pandemic, we saw instances of kids getting access to a broadband because, again, schools were closed. And then 3 children in the household, the data was insufficient, and kids were getting kicked off Zoom. That is a fundamental challenge. And our folks at New America talk about this all of the time. But it's what the last FCC chairwoman used to refer to as the homework gap. It's got to be one-to-one technology. They got to be able to take it home. That's an important part of the solution in making this work. The technology support at school needs to be there as well too. But this idea of one-to-one technology, sufficient tech, sufficient broadband. There are folks who are working on making AI accessible even in a 3G environment, right? I'm seeing that developing around the world in developing countries as well too. But there are some of us who are working on this idea of access. We do work in Haiti, for example, in providing everything from solar power to technology access, to bring technology support to the most remote kinds of communities in an impoverished country, right? But that required the support of folks like the Kellogg Foundation and others. Say we need to do this to make sure we're closing this. But government is where the work is. Governments have to stand up and say we're going to solve this problem for everybody. And last thing I'll say very quickly, I just came back from Uruguay in South America. That country has closed the digital learning gap completely. Every student, every teacher, every classroom is outfitted. Every kid takes a device home. Every teacher takes a device home. They made a decision right around the pandemic, and they did it. If they can do it, we can do it too.
That's great. Jean-Claude, should we invite Larry and Gerald to join us?
That would be awesome.
That'd be great. Thanks for all that setup. And now let's hear a little from our practitioner friends. So just to remind folks, Larry is from the Sylvan Middle School in Atlanta, Georgia, and Gerald is from Orange County in New Jersey. Thank you guys for joining us today. It's great to have you here, and I love a panel where I have as much hair as any other guys on the panel, which doesn't happen every day. I'm curious to start with how each of you got started on this path of working with AI tools and how you sort of made the move from maybe being skeptical to being real enthusiasts. Larry, you want to get us started?
Yes. Good afternoon to everyone. I'll go ahead and get started. I think it goes back to what Ms. Jean-Claude was saying about COVID during that time period and just really getting the devices. But here at our district and at Sylvan Hills Middle School, we were part of the Verizon Learning Digital Promise. So that really helped having those one-to-one devices. It took a lot of trying to educate because there was some skepticism about AI and how that would support. And I'm reading the comments as well, mostly tasking as Mr. Jean-Claude is speaking, but some of that skepticism as far as AI is concerned, but ensuring that we were proactive. It's here. So how do we make the best use of AI in our schools? So it took a lot of conversations with teachers doing our PLs, and then just making sure that responsible use was in place for our students and how it can benefit the work that we're doing. And I think slowly it started to change for us, and seeing some of the benefits, especially when you're coming from an area or where those we talked about the literacy, those scores are low in our area, and how that can support. And we kind of talked about this in some of our planning meetings, just how that can support those students across literacy. So that was some of our excitement about AI. Just some of the features that we've been able to utilize with some of the tools that our district provides for us. We've just been able to see a little bit of the gains and support and how students are getting excited, being able to have that support in place. And I think that's the biggest thing for us.
Gotcha. Gerald, how did you get on this path? And did you start out as a skeptic or you start out as an enthusiast?
I think a little bit of both. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me this afternoon virtually. You know what's interesting? As Mr. Guilford had intimated, during the pandemic was when we learned about all of these tools, right? And so ultimately, we were a little bit skeptical about, allowing students to utilize those tools with fidelity. But what I learned was the more that you teach them how to use it appropriately, you should not have any backlash as it relates to, students not producing their own work product, right? And so I was a skeptic, but now I love it. We have brought in Lumi here to our district. We piloted it at the Orange Preparatory Academy of Inquiry and Innovation. And when I saw that students were creating their own storytelling modules, I thought it was so awesome. And so because we had taught them how to use it prior to Lumi coming in to the district, we have not had or encountered any issues as it relates to writing explorations at the middle school level.
Gerald, how did you go towards adoption? Was it your personal enthusiasm, or was this some institutional decision and you got on board with it?
So what's interesting is that we were not a one-to-one district back in 2019 when I became superintendent. In fact, we became a one-to-one as a result of the pandemic, when we received the ESSER funds, the American Rescue Act funds, the CARES Act funds. And so in learning about all of the technology integrated pieces, we knew that AI was coming, artificial intelligence was coming long before the pandemic. I think it kind of fast track as it relates to, Zoom and Google Meets and all those good tools as well. So ultimately what I felt was most important was that we had to get in front of it, right? And so we had created a paradigm shift when we became part of the Digital Promise grant. The three schools that we inherited first were Orange High School, Oakwood Avenue, as well as Orange Preparatory Academy of Inquiry and Innovation. And one thing that I thought was important to note is that because of that partnership, we saw the importance of instituting AI-affiliated work with the regular curricular work that we do here on the continuum.
Gotcha. Yeah. Larry?
No, I was just saying the same thing, following up with that. It's one of those tools that were in our my backpack with our district that you never really used. So I think our district got where they wanted to do more. Hey, we have this for you all. It's available to you all, and they started educating the staff more, the admins, the teachers, and so forth. And we found out how that could really benefit the work that we were doing with our students and how we can benefit that. So I think, like I said, the biggest thing is just the education piece for both the teachers, staff, as well as the student, and then responsible usage. That's where the change, I believe, begins, seeing all the benefits of it.
I'm really curious about that thing you just talked about, and I suspect that people who are listening are curious too, which is how do you actually prepare teachers and other educators and other people in the school environment to use AI tools in the best way, not the not best way? What's the training look like? And what's not only the training, but kind of the mindset shift for a lot of teachers around using these kind of tools? Gerald, you want to start?
So you think about Carol Dweck's work where she explains the paradigm where you go from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset.
You
But
bet.
very similar to that, right? So you do have teachers who are more innovative, if that makes any sense. So your professional development, and we call them a test period here, teacher enrichment success periods, those are periods where we actually go in and differentiate professional development for our staff. So in those particular conversations, we have folks that are really good with integration of AI, working with those that are a little bit afraid, right? And we have a takeaway. So there has to be something that they would try in their classroom and create with their co-teacher, whereby at the end of the test period, they would have developed it, and then the co-teacher that helped develop it goes in and provides that critical support. So it's not only in that test period for 40 minutes, but it's also the opportunity for teachers to work one-on-one together with a group of students so that they are working and learning in tandem together.
Yeah.
It has to be differentiated, to say the least, if that makes any sense to the folks that are on the line.
Totally makes sense. Go ahead, Larry.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking, like you said, doing our PLs, and we're not the gurus of it, so we try to make sure those in the district come in and speak to the teams as well during those PL sessions. But going back to what John Clyde said, and I wrote that down, that it's a tool, not a replacement. So that's extremely important, and making sure that our teachers know we don't want you to just use it for everything. We want to make sure that you all are creating those lessons or coming up with those ideas, but also using it as a tool to support teaching and learning as well. And that's what we really try to push for those ones who are skeptical. Like I said, going back to those staff members who are great with AI and showing them some of the benefits. One of those ones that was showed in the video was the gallery walk. And I just thought back to a teacher who used something similar like that in one of my ELA classrooms and created a whole gallery walk, and how those students really got that lesson that particular day when I observed. So I think doing that, modeling, having them to come in and look at some of those teachers who are good with the AI, releases some of that I don't want to say tension and stress, but that level of insecurity when it comes to AI.
John, can I just add a bit to the two? I couldn't agree more. The idea of having lab classrooms, I think, has always been an amazing thing around professional learning and getting teachers to acclimate. Let me just say a few things, just to build on the two comments. One is that you need to have a coherent instructional system in your school. That is a fundamental work of education, right? Then the technology becomes that kind of enabler and supporter, right? If you go first with a shiny tool, you're in trouble to begin with, right? So that's an important foundation to actually have. I don't think this is different than any other kind of tech integration into your curriculum, into your CNI work, into your pedagogical work. The stakes are a little higher, don't get me wrong, right? Because what I find sometimes, like when the internet became sort of like ubiquitous, right? People see it on the web, it must be true. If GenAI says it, if ChatGPT or Gemini says it, it must be true, right? The fact is, you got to be an informed consumer of the information and what's coming at you. For example, I remember seeing an early tool, gotten much better, that was asked to design a project-based lesson for kids who are dyslexic, right? The project-based design was actually pretty good. The science on dyslexia was garbage. And unless you had some understanding as a teacher, you're like, this is not good stuff. But now we're watching the data, the models are being trained on, getting better and better. Like our partnership with Google has been amazing because they are listening to this sort of learning science construct. So most teachers, most of us who teach, have to be informed consumer of what's coming at us. If a tool is being adopted by a school system or by a school, the integration into the fabric of the teaching and learning construct is important. The professional learning is important. Yes, sometimes you may have to start with a few lab classroom with teachers who are going to jump at this in a way that really is really, really important. But informed consuming, which is why I think a good proxy here is the certification. The Tech Index by ISTE, many of us contribute to it, is a good place to start. We are working as a coalition, a bunch of us, including CAST, to make it better. But the bottom line is that's a good place to start in your procurement to make sure that what you're buying is quality stuff. Lumi is another one. We've been working with Lumi as well at Digital Promise. And we certify these products for research-based design because we know there's got to be some foundation around efficacy that you really want these products to actually have.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. There was a question in the Q&A about certification, so I'm glad you spoke to that, Jean-Claude. Larry and Gerald, let's get it, like out of the 30,000 foot thing and all the way down to the ground. I'd love for you to give an example of where you saw an AI tool really unlock a kid or a classroom's possibilities of learning. Let's try to make this more real, less ethereal.
That's a good, John, I think that's a really great point because we are, as a superintendent, I'm not in the school classroom every day.
Right.
But I do go to schools every day, which is a benefit, right? And so the day that I actually came into Orange Prep, I went into one of the English courses, and that is the classes aligned to our ELL and multilingual students. They were engaging with the Lumi tool in the effort of creating their new story predicated on characters they built, the setting, etc. But they just put keywords in there and it was building it and they could revise and edit in real time. I think that is the benefit of having the AI tool, right? Because again, what we have taught our students is that because it spits some information out to you, go back and do your research. Because again, it not only gives you information, it allows the student to do research to make sure it is aligned to what their thinking is as it relates to the story that they're building.
Gotcha. Love that. Larry, what are you seeing, real on the ground stuff?
Dr. Gerald stole my thunder.
I'll ask you the next one. I'll ask you first next time around.
That's the job of superintendents, Larry.
No, I think that's where I'm seeing it. One of the things I was talking to my instructional coach about before we got started today, and that was one of the things, creating those characters is a huge one that we're seeing. Another one, I'm just thinking about one of my ELA teachers. One of our challenges, I just say in my particular school, is writing as well. So being able to create those writing prompts for those students, that's been extremely helpful. But going back to what Dr. Joe was saying about when those students are doing those writing assignments, being able to utilize AI to go back and look at those writing prompts, those writing assignments, and see where they're maybe grammatically incorrect on different things. So that's helped to improve our writing score. That's a part of what helped, not all, but that's helped us with writing for our students. So seeing our teachers utilize that, those writing prompts, reading passages is another one. We, like I say, everything keeps going back to that piece. Those reading passages, like I say, we go back to talking about earlier during our planning when we were talking, just allowing students to have materials that interest them or something to that nature. And I think that's been able to help during those times. We do something that's called drop everything and read. And during that time, those students are able to utilize AI to find material that interests them as well. So we're seeing the benefit those scores with those particular tools, and then just teachers being able to create rubrics and feedback for students when we're looking at their writing. So it's definitely on the ground. It's changing our data, speaking specifically for Silver Hills Middle School, and we're seeing it on the ground and seeing how our data is changing with some of the implementation. But like I say, I always have to just continually say it's not replacing good instruction, because you can't replace good instruction. It's just another tool to supplement good instruction.
Do the students know what they're working with? I mean, how transparent is it to students? Are they getting like what these tools are, or is it just, the kind of thing that exists in the world and kids adapt to whatever exists in the world?
I'll say for me, I think it's a little bit of both. I think the students really understand the technology, and how tech savvy they are with that. So I think students definitely understand AI and the benefits of it as well. But like say, with us, we use Right Score. I don't know if who all uses Right Score, but our district has a component on there when they're doing Right Score if students have used AI during that time. And it's able to shoot out to us who may have completed their writing piece with AI assistance. We're able to have conversations with those particular students as well. So we've been good, not a large percentage. I think we've gotten better as we've educated the students more, and just letting them, getting them to understand, hey, we want to see what you do know and what you can do on your own, but it's also beneficial as well. But I definitely believe that they understand the benefit of it.
John, can I just add quickly to what Larry just said? I mean, we just launched back in April a certification for AI products. That's exactly the idea that the agency and the autonomy of the teacher and the student has to be maintained. They need to know what's being collected, how it's being collected, what it's doing, and the option to opt out of the AI being a part of their world. And that is part of what we look for in products to make sure that the agency actually maintain. When you have a moment, I want to get back to a comment that Nikita put in the chat about this idea of what I mean. I think she talked about productive struggle, right? Does that rob to the productive struggle? And I can give maybe one example in particular where this idea of elevating pedagogy is really important in this conversation.
I think, Gerald, did you want to add something right there?
About productive struggle, John?
Anything, or what Larry was talking about before about what kids, sort of awareness of what they're using right now, how clear it is to them what kind of tools they're using.
Just in essence, if we don't teach them how to use it properly, then again, they won't have that productive struggle.
Yeah.
In order for students to be pedagogically sound and critical thinkers, there has to be some type of struggle. So we don't want our students to only think of the AI tool as an easy way out. We're teaching them how to engage with it as relates to their understanding of content pedagogy and practice.
Yeah.
So it can't just be this one thing where it spits out information. No, what you really need to do is to research what is spit out from the program to make sure it's in alignment to the curricular goals that are trying to be ascertained from the work that is being given.
Gotcha. Jean-Claude, let's go to this. Let's go to this question of productive struggle, because sometimes when I use AI, it's because I specifically don't want to engage in productive struggle at that moment. Just
That's
want
true.
the damn thing to give me an answer. Tell me this. So Nikita raised this question about struggle, which really gets to the question that was earlier about, it's a similar question to what was posed earlier about patience and actually learning to read and not being entertained all the time and overstimulated all the time. Part of that is that concept of productive struggle for young people. How do you think about that?
So there is a difference between productive struggle and getting into drudgery, right? I don't have to walk 10 miles to demonstrate I know how to get from one place to another, right? I can get to a car and actually get there. Let me give you perhaps paraphrase an example a colleague of mine said on a panel, which I've never forgotten. If you ask ChatGPT or Gemini, write a 5-paragraph essay, which we know is not good ELA teaching, right? The kid puts the prompt in and gets a spit back. My 9-year-old was doing that, right? And he was proud he didn't do it, still got an A on the assignment. But if you ask a child to write a prompt, ask the AI to take a position on a topic, and then write another prompt, ask the AI to take a counter position on the same topic, controversial topic, right? And then you work with a classmate and write a PowerPoint juxtaposing the two positions and give us your own opinion and present that to the class, right? All of a sudden now you're leveraging the technology, you're learning prompt engineering, right? You're learning how to use the AI without necessarily removing the fact that you have to do something and learn something and demonstrate learning, right? John, I talk about this all the time. I'm a commercial pilot. I've been using machine learning and AI in aviation for years in flying, right? It's made my aviation, my flying, make all of our flying a lot safer. All of us, right? The big airlines, right? What it doesn't do is remove the need for a human to be there and managing the machine. We talk about computational thinking a lot, digital promise. So that work remains. So when you think about human ingenuity in machines, right? If you remove the need to really move our pedagogy to a different level, if we keep teaching that we did in 1975, we're in trouble. Then we're not teaching these young people how to leverage the machines to do what they have to do. We can't forget about the kinds of skills and competencies that young people today need to be able to navigate today's workforce. That is the work that we have to keep in mind. It includes productive struggle, but let's do it and leverage technology. Otherwise, we're leaving them behind.
I think let's just stick on this productive struggle, because I think it's sort of a core question about AI. And let's think about it in the context of early learning. It's learning to read can be difficult, right? If it gets too difficult, a kid gets too frustrated and opts out, basically. It's too hard. So something that makes it just that wee bit easier and that wee bit more amusing might suck in more kids that are struggling. But it also could just, you could take out the struggle. I'm struggling with how we think about this, particularly with relationship to early learning and early reading. Jean-Claude, what do you think about all that?
Yeah. So let me one more time. I want to show you one slide. I want to go back to this because it's an important concept of the purpose of education.
Yes.
The purpose of education is not drudgery, right? It is about agency, purpose, curiosity, connection. Let me lean on a connection, for example. Can your student collaborate across differences? Can they sit in a room with 40 people from different parts of the world and engage in a conversation on a particular strategy? We just elevate the work that we need to do to really move on this idea of powerful learning, which we know, frankly, is what begets the kind of experiences that folks need. Look, it doesn't remove the foundational need for basic math, but we don't have to live there. We don't have to live there, right? We can move up. There are ways of enhancing literacy instruction, right? That involves leveraging technology without going back to what we did in 1940. I mean, that is a fundamental piece. Let me give you one more example that we have not yet addressed in education. I was walking to the iLab at the University of Washington. I saw a brain scan, and the head of the lab said to me, "You know what that is?" I'm like, "No idea." And she said, "That's a child who is ready to learn to read." As you can tell that from the brain scan, she goes, absolutely. What that means for pedagogy and curriculum, I don't know yet. But I was part of a salon conversation at dinner with neurobiologists, neuroscientists, learning scientists, AI experts. It was the most fascinating dinner I've been in the last 5 years because I saw the connection between technology, neuroscience, neurobiology. It is an area of exploration we are just beginning to understand and tinker with. But all to say, is that the purpose of education is around human ingenuity. Let's make sure we live there and not necessarily live in drudgery.
That's great. Thanks for that. I have a question from the audience that I want to throw in here, which has to do with implementation. Jean-Claude, you and I have had many conversations about implementation. We know that having a big idea is hard, but it's not nearly as hard as implementing a big idea. And you get lots of variation, let's say, in how well things are implemented. And often that variation works to the disadvantage of students who are already disadvantaged. They're in more stressed districts, lower resource districts, and so forth. So let's imagine we're going to deploy AI tools broadly. What, Larry, Gerald, would you say about the implementation? We have our audience today is made up of lots of people in communities across the country who are advocating for change, who are supporting districts that are making change. what would you advise them about how to implement AI tools in a way that is successful, fair, and equitable? Larry, you want to go first? Because I see Gerald nodding his head and getting ready to steal your thunder.
Go ahead, Gerald. Go ahead.
It's all in how it's rolled out. I always
Yeah.
believe that an AI tool cannot be a substitute for critical thinking, an attribute of knowledge, right? And so it is important that through the professional development cohorts that we have in our school buildings, in our districts, we have to show our educators how to roll out efficiently and effectively, and also giving them kind of a guidebook of what to do. Because when I first became a principal, the assistant superintendent gave me the keys and said, "You're the principal of Chancellor Avenue Annex." I knew nothing about being a principal of my building, right? But I needed a little bit more, assistance with things that would make me successful as being a principal. So with that being said, it's the same paradigm as what I'm explaining. We cannot give folks keys without giving them the module for them to be successful with the implementation of the process.
Yeah, and I was thinking the same thing. I was just reading one of the comments that talked about no academic standards for using AI, and I think that goes back to that part. We just have to make sure that we're continuously conducting PLs, having those conversations. And like I say, my instructional coach does a lot of that work with my teachers, but I ensure that my team are a part of those conversations so we can make sure that teachers are using it responsibly, so they can also encourage their students to use it responsibly as well. So just a lot of time spent with the teachers doing PL sessions to ensure that we are responsible users of it. And like you said, that is not a situation where everyone just kind of all across the board using it and not getting lazy. Because at the end of the day, you got to make sure that you know what you're doing in the classroom, that those lessons are making sense, and that you're just not using AI to create your lessons. And we can tell them that those administrators, those teachers, those superintendents, everyone can tell if a teacher has really taken time with that lesson or just created a AI lesson plan.
Yeah, so that gets me to the next question that I think people are curious about, and I see some of the chat and see some of the questions, and I have a sense. So you guys are enthusiasts. You're part of the thing with Digital Promise. You're all in. But tell us what worries you about this? What do you worry about with AI? I got your enthusiasm and I'm with you, but I'm really curious what you're worried about, the impact. Larry, you go first this time.
Okay. I think it goes back to responsible usage of it. Like I say, we have a process in place from the school level where teachers have to submit their lesson plans and so forth. So ensuring that if we have lesson plans due on Friday, they just didn't go through AI and created a lesson plan. So from that perspective, from our students, like everyone was saying in the comments and in the questions, that we're just not providing a crutch for our students. So we want to make sure that think time, that struggle, all of those things are in place. So just really making sure that it's responsible usage for us is one of those things that you just worry about all the time during that process. But really understanding how much of a benefit, like we talked about, how much of a benefit it is, and how when used properly, how engaging it can be. So that's some of my worries sometimes with AI usage across the building.
Great. Gerald, what about you? What do you worry about? I know you're an enthusiast. I'm for that. What are you worried about, honestly?
There's an example about reading books, and we cannot forget that the art of reading is so powerful in the enjoyment of it, learning about the narrative elements and having those conversations. I don't want to take the conversational piece out of curricular instruction. We want to keep the conversational piece evident so that children understand their thinking, but also to prove their understanding. So I use Socratic Seminar as an example. We know that at the upper grade level, Socratic seminars allow for students to research and prove a point. Well, I want them to have enough knowledge to be able to prove their point. So that's research. But if they need a little bit of assistance of doing what? Creating their argument, then we can use the AI tool, right? But ultimately, they are learning from their research and then using the tool to enhance their presentation of. So I do not want children, and I'll go back to the reading example. My dad is my late father is a former librarian. He made sure I read every day after school at the North Public Library in New Jersey, right? And so I have a love of reading, and I would look at my kids, and both of my children love to read. My wife reads, right? But that was long before AI. I was born in 1978, right? And so I always feel that because if it's not broke, why do we have to fix it, right? And so reading cannot be replaced with a computer. In fact, the example I gave about research, you can research and then prove your algorithm, or you can prove your argument, if you will, predicated on research and then using the AI tool to enhance your argument. So again, it all goes into teaching and learning it appropriately versus just giving them the keys to the school and saying, just go ahead and get on the computer and figure it out on your own. Let's show our students the tool, how to engage with it so they can be successful, but not also forgetting the nuances of sound pedagogy and practice through the means of critical thinking.
Yeah.
John, can I jump into this as well?
Absolutely.
Thank you. This is a fun one. So what I'm worried about is that we're going to outsource our teaching and learning to technology. That's what worries me. And it's not just AI. If you've been to classrooms where folks had a computer on the periphery of the classroom, and you see kids on the computers doing something else. And I've been in classrooms where I've asked, so what are those kids doing? How does it integrate with your lesson, what you're doing? More than a number of times, the teacher had no clue, no idea. It was something they were told to do. So they're doing. The data does not integrate into the actual lesson. I mean, that's the outsourcing of the work that we do, which really worries me. The fundamental work remains in teaching and learning. I'm watching all the chat stuff about kids need to read books. Yes, that is teaching and learning. The technology is a tool and enhancement. But let me give you perhaps an example. Again, old physics teacher in New York City. When I discovered technology in my science lab, those of you guys who remember your science lab in high school, biology, chemistry, or physics, there was a cookbook lab, right? You follow procedure, you did this, you did this, you did that. Then you asked to go home and analyze. More often than not, and I'm going to be honest, I have a degree in chemistry. I had no clue what the hell I was doing, right? Or what I did, right? I mean, that is the mainstay of science labs in most high schools around the country, around the world for that matter. When I discovered technology in my lab, we flipped the paradigm. The experimentation lasted 90 seconds or 30 seconds or 2 minutes. The discussion and the inquiry and the argument lasted 20 minutes. So that whole paradigm shift happened because of a probe, right? A Planck, COTS, and a Mach E2. We're looking at velocity versus time, acceleration. And I just quick example, if you don't mind. I went to a group and asked them, what will the graph look like? And they give me a vertical line. I resisted from telling them that's not possible. And I said, show it to me. And I sat back and just watched productive struggle. I watched in frustration. They couldn't make it happen. Then I walked over about 5 minutes and said, why are you guys having difficulty? And one kid says, wait a second, the thing is moving, but time is not changing. That's not possible. The kid who said the slope of the line is infinity now has a PhD in physics, right? So cookbook lab, by the way, Friday afternoon, 4 to 6 p.m. That's the only time I could get the lab at New York City Tech. I couldn't get them out of the classroom because they were engaged in the laboratory experiment. So my point is that technology does not replace the fundamental relationship that we need to have in education, but it can be an amazing enabler.
Jean-Claude, I want to ask you about that. Let's go back to that. we have a whole history of technological solutions that have either turned out not to be solutions when I'll just age myself. Like we put TVs in the classroom and we thought this was going to be transformation. What they put on that TV was so boring. It made the teacher look good. And we also have a history of technological solutions or ideas that tend to drive disparate outcomes rather than close the gaps. Our focus is on, and our group that listens to this, all of their focus is on closing gaps. So tell me why you think this is going to be different.
So it's what I said at the beginning of our discussion, John. Technology is not going to revolutionize education.
Yeah.
Educators will. Yes, the television. I mean, maybe you're a little bit older than I am, but we're not that far apart. I mean, I remember too when television was going to revolutionize education. TV is not going to do that. People will do that. So it became an outsourcing tool. I remember it as a principal. We had to write teachers up. A couple of my teachers kept doing this. Put a movie on or a show, and then they left. That is not teaching. That's outsourcing your work to a box, right? But if you have a really good, coherent instructional plan and system, and the technology is a part of that, then you have a real potential here. No tool will do that unless we actually make it happen. And that's the fundamental work, which is why I beg people to not be passengers in this effort. One of our listeners said, I'm going to wait for AI to become ethical first. My push is that if you're going to wait for that to happen, it's never going to happen. Because the folks who are selling are looking to make money. The bottom line is, there are really good ethical companies out there, don't get me wrong. But the educators, the folks who are buying, have to become informed consumers and demand certain things of the technology. Otherwise, it's not going to behave accordingly. We can drive the market, is my point, as educators, in making sure that what we are buying is of quality and fits what we need to fit to serve the kids we have in front of us every single day.
Love that. Maya just posted a really interesting question. I'd love to get Larry and Gerald back in the conversation. What Maya is asking has to do with taking into account the non-academic parts of children's experience in the world. Whether we're thinking about trauma or SEL. How do you think about AI tools and their interaction with the whole child needs and some of the baggage that kids can bring with them? Gerald, why don't you go first on this one?
So for anyone that knows me and even looks at the website, they'll see that the foci here also outside of academics is wellness and self-care. And so we have a superintendent's trauma informed team. There are 4 clinical social workers that are on my team that advise me as it relates to SEL and wellness and all those good things. What I've learned from that particular group of folks is having your hands on them is the most important. We've never utilized an AI tool to generate supports for children. We could do research about things that could potentially assist students. However, but the counseling supports or the group dynamic pieces, we do all of that from mouth to mouth, right? In person, body to body, because we want to make sure that ultimately the students have that on-level time with our clinical social workers and or our guidance counselors. But again, research-based supports and ideas for group dynamic teams and things of that nature, that's fine for using the AI tool, but I have not personally, and I won't say that I would ever really want to use an AI tool for social emotional supports, because I do feel that it is important to have that person right in front of you so you can, support their needs and wants and desires, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, sure. Larry, how do you think about, some of the things that influence kids' ability to learn that are not on the academic side of the ledger?
Yeah, I think that was a great question. I never really thought about it from that perspective. But like that Gerald said, for us, everything we do is hands-on. We have a lot of partnerships that support our the trauma, especially in the area where I'm located, the trauma that we deal with. We do have SEL built into our daily schedule, but we do all of that through conversations, groups, so forth with our students, and then we push in a lot of our counselors to help support in those areas. So for us, we haven't necessarily used AI in reference to those traumas, though the SEL, some of the other things that our students and family deal with. I've just found in that area that it's better, as we talked about earlier, just having those strong relationships with those staff members, teachers, students, family members to support some of the things that our families and students are dealing with.
Yeah, Jean-Claude.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you want to say something else?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to just hop on this one as well too. It's actually an area of full development right now that's being looked at by a number of different organizations, including Digital Promise. Our learner variability work really leans on this idea of the academic and non-academic. In fact, the non-academic, frankly, we know is so critical to the academic work. So everything we know around the whole child is so critically important. I put a link in the chat, work being done by the Carnegie Foundation, looking at redesigning high school. And if you look at that work too, it leans quite a bit. It aligns very well with our definition of powerful learning, which, as you can see, leans on this idea of a holistic environment. The bottom line is there is a science to this work. It's not just a nice to do around holding a child whole, but we know through the science, if you really want a child to succeed, those non-academic competencies are critical and prerequisites and co-requisites for the academic work. So lots of folks at this right now. I would just say pay attention. You're going to see a lot more. And I think that'll be an amazing role for technology in supporting that kind of work. And the place I'm most excited about is what this will mean for the future of assessment. Right now, assessment is a thing. It's a place. It's a thing you do that is an additive to the day. Imagine assessment, frankly, being embedded in pedagogy and activities in a child's life that is transparent to the child, yes, and to the user, but implicit. That's coming. And I think we have a chance now with good AI to actually make that reality in our schools.
Well, Jean-Claude, that's really interesting. It gets to, I think, something that's beneath this conversation and some of the tension in it, which is, this also gets to a point we've discussed before. All learning is fundamentally relational. Mm-hmm. So what's the interaction? What we don't want is, I think, is for kids, it's great if kids can get feedback and direction and so forth from AI, but we do not want them having conversations with bots. No. We want them having conversations with humans. So how do you all see that the interaction between the power of and the dazzle of these AI tools and the need for basic human interaction for most kids to really learn in a big way? Larry, why don't you kick off this final round? And by the way, we'll post the, Sierra, why don't we go ahead and post the poll? People who are still with us, please fill out this poll, but we'll continue the conversation while you're doing that.
All right. I think it goes back, and I saw a couple comments in the chat, just talking about we can't replace that teacher that's inside that building, inside that classroom. We see it across schools all across the country. When you got good relationships with a loving, caring adult in the building, we see how students perform at a higher level. I think the biggest thing is I'm thinking about the writing for us, some of the writing assignments. We're not telling the students, or our teachers are not having students complete writing assignments via AI necessarily, but we're asking them to complete your writing assignment, let your teacher go in, look at it, review it, and then give you maybe use the AI tool to review it, edit it, and get some more information that could improve your writing assignment. And I think that's the difference. Not just turning it over to the students and asking them to do everything via AI, because that's where we do not see that progressive struggle with our students that we want to make sure that we're seeing in the classroom so we can make sure that critical thinking is taking place. So that's the big piece for how to bring all of it together. But like I said, it all goes back to educating all pillars, all stakeholders, the parents, the community, the students, the teachers, and ensuring proper use of it.
That's great. Gerald, I'm going to come to you on this question of the interaction between AI tools and their power and their dazzle and making space for the relational part of learning.
I do think that small group instructional practices as it relates to writing as an example would be powerful. So let's say a student is building and researching and they then go with their teacher or their peer and then thus have that conversational piece at that small group instructional table, predicated on what was spit out from the AI tool, but also through the research that was generated. I think that's more advantageous, right? I think that the writing process cannot be negated. I think that we have to continue that process and it cannot be shut down from an AI tool. In fact, I do think the research space is fine, but I do think it's important, however, to have that engagement between student to student, teacher to student. We can't give that up.
Jean-Claude, thoughts on relationships and AI?
It's foundational. I mean, John, you always hear me say education is human development.
Yeah.
And it's why I put that slide about the relationship between teachers, students, parents, and content.
Yep.
And technology supports that, right? It does not replace it. Without a human connection, you're never going to get there. By the way, there's a lot of folks who are experts in this. I was just talking about this woman my wife met recently who is a curiosity expert at New York University. You've got these folks who are part of the schools of psychology. We're just beginning to understand what they've known for a long time about education in the education department. There's a lot to learn about how kids learn, but we know fundamentally it's about the human relationship, which is why human ingenuity has to be a part of the discussion. We cannot outsource our work to AI. And I'm going to beg again that the leaders in our room here do not outsource the work. You demand that the stuff you actually are buying are quality and supportive of your work, not replacing of your work.
That's fantastic. Gerald, Larry, thanks so much for joining us today. Sierra, thanks for all the work you did to produce this, and to Hillary and to the team at Digital Promise. Jean-Claude, you said you're a pilot, you've been a co-pilot on this session today. And so I think it's appropriate to allow you to land the plane here in the last couple of minutes.
John, I mean, that's a tough act. I'll just say that when we remove the human in the loop, we got the MAX 8 and 3 crashes actually happened, right? With Boeing. You cannot remove the human in the loop of AI or work. It is fundamentally a human endeavor. And again, without that, we're never going to be successful. Let's learn from the psychologists about how to teach, and let's make sure we keep that relationship alive, and let's demand quality products in our schools.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much. I hope you will join the coming sessions on technology enhanced teaching and learning. Again, Gerald, thanks so much. Larry, thank you so much for joining. And I will turn it back to Sierra to close us out. Thanks, everybody.
I am just going to echo John's thanks to Jean-Claude and really to our panel for taking the time on Digital Promise's behalf to plan this with us and support the work. But there are a lot of questions still outstanding in this conversation today, and we know that. And so we would encourage you to come back during GLR week. One of the sessions during GLR week is part of this series on guide on EdTech and technology enhanced teaching and learning, and the guardrails and guidelines session. Thank you, Sierra. You knew where I was going. Is really about putting that guidance in place in the context that you're working, because we know that that's part of the need. And so for those of you who are still feeling that, please jump in and register for that, or share it with someone who needs to be there and be part of that conversation. But really, we encourage you to come to all things GLR Week. You just got the promo for the one that connects with what we're talking about. But if you want to be talking about chronic absenteeism, about rural contexts, about Alice families, about all of the things that are occurring in the education space, say this is the place to be for our youngest learners as we think about them and how we can support them better. So please set aside some time during GLR Week to engage in this series. We'd really appreciate your time, and thank you to everyone.